Hi, my name is Jessica Couch. I am a fashion and technology expert, and I go to conferences and do research so you don't have to. I had a new experience after going to many a conference and doing much research. I got to be the chair of a conference, Retail Rebels. So PI Apparel produced Retail Rebels in New York with the hope of creating a different type of conference where there was more conversation, not like a normal conference where you just hear people talk about themselves the whole time and you're kind of disconnected from socializing or meeting people. It was a smaller, more intimate, still formal, but very informative event. And I got to be the chair of it, which was a lot. So basically being the chair, which I didn't know, outside of like helping to pick the topics and the flow, you absolutely have to give a keynote in the beginning. You have to introduce speakers and you have to do a bunch of stuff. So that was baby's first time being a chair. Really enjoyed it. Thank you so much to the PI Apparel team for even including me. That was definitely my type of event. Okay, but we're not here to talk about too much about my time as chair. I want to tell you what I learned at Retail Rebels because some of the information that was covered there is absolutely pertinent. And since you didn't go and since you don't do research, but you're probably a brand or a retailer or somebody really interested in fashion, it's my job to share it with you. So let's get into it. If you keep up with retail, if you keep up with fashion, you probably notice fashion is in distress. Essence is in the news, not the Black magazine, but the retailer that sells international luxury items. They're in the news, not for a good reason. Basically, they're trying to run off on the plug. Essence owes brands millions of dollars, and that's really embarrassing because it lets us know that this wholesale model absolutely does not work. Now, this is not the first time we've talked about a retailer not being able to pay the brands or the vendors. This happened to Saks. This kind of is what happened to Forever 21. This has been repeated because the wholesale model with retail right now just does not work. It's never really a good idea to front product to anybody and wait to get your money back. That's just kind of 101 of doing business. But that is indeed what the wholesale model is based on. Brands are faithfully fronting product and waiting to be paid once that product is sold and once retailers do good. Now, in an era where the only way you could really get clothing was to go into a store, then of course this was a good idea. We're so far past that era. I have no idea why this model is still existing in the same way without adjusting to modern times. The reason why Essence is in trouble is it's not selling product. Now, Essence isn't even a physical store. It's an online store. The cheaper products become, and the easier it is to get something in 2 days that looks similar to what you want and it'll do because nobody's going to be coming up to you and feeling your fabric like, sweetheart, that is not silk chiffon at all. That's polyester, because that doesn't exist anymore. People can shamelessly wear super cheap stuff and nobody cares. Because things are cheap, people are always expecting a discount. They're always expecting a discount because we have trained consumers that you can get a discount if you wait long enough because obviously you're not interested in our product. Now, we know that discounting is not a good sales model. If you keep cheapening your product, not only are people going to devalue it, but they're absolutely not going to buy it at full price. So you have these stores that sell full price luxury items and people are sitting there like, where's my discount? Now, that's just one thing that has happened with consumer behavior. But the other things that have happened is that people are finding other methods and ways and places to shop. They're not always going to retailers in the same way that they used to. And so is it a good idea for brands to wholesale to retailers? That is the question that we are trying to answer. Now, you may be wondering, what is the alternative? Well, the alternative would be direct to consumer. But as we can see, direct to consumer has its own problems. The brand decides to go direct to consumer. What they're saying is, we're going to bypass wholesale. We're going to keep our inventory and we're going to strictly market to our consumers, wait for them to come to us, and we're going to sell to them exclusively. Now, this was a really great idea at the dawn of social commerce. When Shopify first did their deal with Facebook and with Instagram, this was great because what brands were living off of was, I'm going to buy X amount of ads, I'm going to get X amount of revenue. And that worked year in, year out, year in, year out. You can build a brand and you could faithfully say that I know that this investment of X amount of ads will get us X amount of sales. Maybe we're selling t-shirts, maybe we're selling hoodies, whatever it was that people were selling, this worked well until it didn't. Then we entered the era where social commerce made it a little more difficult to actually get your product in front of the right eyes. So like as people transition away from Facebook and other places where maybe you would have a lot more opportunity to show your ad to a person, now we're on Instagram where ads have to be threaded into your feed. Now, this change alone caused a lot of trouble because you have to figure out how to get the right product in front of the right person. And of course, that costs money. And the more that it costs, the more brands are spending, but the less your product is getting in front of the right person. So now you're paying 2 to 8 times more for the same experience or maybe even less. So now we have a problem with direct to consumer. You can't get the right product to the right person because the channels in which you're showing your product are way too congested. You have to fight with people showing you election ads. You have to fight with news about what's going on. You can't even see your friends post in your feed anymore. That's why they moved a lot of things to the story because they understood that your feed is now congested with so many other ads Who's going to see your brand ad exactly? And by the time they see it, it's because they've already shopped with you, which is a lag method. We don't like lag. We like to be proactive. So some of the technology that has to show up in the next few years is all going to be around driving the right product to the right person, like the product that I'm building called Looks AI, which will soon be available on Shopify. Anyway, let's talk about some of the trends that we discovered at PI Apparels. But this time it wasn't so much about Gen AI and design. It was more about Gen AI as it's going to replace videography and photography. So you are hearing this from me first. If you were a catalog photographer, a catalog stylist, a catalog videographer, people who do edits and touch up, your industry is going to be threatened first with AI because a lot of the companies that were presenting their technological solutions were all about you taking one image and creating hundreds of images based off that. You can easily change ethnicity, lighting, background, everything. So the idea of having to go and pay for expensive shoots and scout models and go on location and have these really cool images, that is over. AI can do it all. AI can take a picture of your sneakers right now and turn it into a 3D object, change the lighting on it, and create a whole marketing ad. This is the type of technology that's happening for photography and videography. Now, this concerns me because we're putting a whole group of people who support catalog development, shooting, styling, all of that out of business. But let's not bet on it too much, because when Vogue tried this and created fully digital models, digital products, people were like, ew, Vogue, why would you do that? I'm going to cancel my subscription. So it seems like when people know that it's happening, they don't like it. Why? Because human to human contact is still important. Everything is digital. Why in the world would you want to see a fake looking person in fake clothing when you're trying to buy things that's realistic? I mean, I don't know. A lot of people could argue and say, well, models look fake and that's not realistic. And the products that they put on models don't actually fit like that. Sure, we could do that all day. But then when you take that aspect out altogether and you have digital models, you might as well have robots, and no one's going to want to shop like that. Now, one thing that consumers are really good at is understanding who their peers are. We're in a space where peer-to-peer is even more important. It seems like creating a digital model could absolutely be a conflict of interest. But what if you couldn't tell the difference? That's going to be the problem, because AI is so good right now. You cannot tell the difference that some of these models were absolutely fabricated by a system. They look like real people with maybe a little percentage of something off, or maybe a little too perfect. Now, we recall when the airbrush era came through and people were looking way too flawless, counterculture came and was like, we don't like this. This is weird. We want to see some acne. We want to see a little stretch mark, not too much, because then it's teetering on like, oh, this is too woke, or we don't want to see that. But people wanted to see enough flaws to know that it's human. Now, with the dawn of AI, I'm sure that human to human connection during a time where people are barely seeing humans or leaving home to do stuff is going to be super important. But I'm just here to tell you what was talked about at the conference and what you should be aware of. So let's move on. The next piece of AI that's been really important is actually having chatbots that are more human-like to help brands with things like returns as well as product defects. So it may not seem like a big deal now, but you know how annoying it is to try to do returns, or if you have a defect with a sneaker or something now, AI is getting a little better. It doesn't feel quite like a chat bot, but it can help you say, okay, yeah, those Nikes are messed up. And we know the policy around Nike is if it is messed up and within a certain time frame, you can absolutely send it back, get it to us. And that's taken down on the amount of personnel that's needed to do that, the amount of time you have to spend on hold, all of those things that make the return process just so annoying. And we absolutely hate it. That's why we end up with all the things that we don't like and we don't shop. So next, one of the biggest things that were shown, and we saw a lot of companies in this space, is of course virtual try-on. And every company who has a virtual try-on solution absolutely boasts that it is helpful for sales. People love it. And wouldn't you like to see your product on you? Some people have virtual try-on that can walk down a runway so you can see yourself walking, because a lot of people feel like fashion should be fun. You know, we want to bring back the fun in fashion. If you've seen the videos that I've done with virtual try on, you'll notice that, like, for me, it's not something I'm going to be utilizing that much. One, I don't want to see how a product will look on a fake body, because I have a body that needs to be fitted a certain way. Size and fit is so important to me. I need to see it on people. So virtual try-on isn't that fun for me, but I do think it'll be like the Polyvore 2.0 era. And if you don't remember Polyvore, it was just a tool that you could constantly put together looks. Now, some research is showing that doing this absolutely increases revenue. I think it increases engagement. And I think we have to know the difference between product engagement and actually product purchases. But right now it sounds good because there's so many companies that have so much money dumped into them to do this. I'm sure that we're going to keep coming up with more figures to justify virtual try-on. It's not my thing, but it could be something for other people. So I'm not going to knock it. I think there's room for all types of technology because there's all types of shoppers. Next, we saw more fit technology, which is great because we finally have mediums that allow us to take the measurements from a tech pack, the measurements from your clothing, and compare it to your body measurements. But the only caveat is still you have to scan your body. But what the good news is, a lot of these companies have figured out no one likes what their body scan looks like. It doesn't matter how perfect your body is. It doesn't matter how flawless it is. If you've ever been in a body scanner and you've gotten that blob image back, you're going to find something you hate about it. That's why they're in gyms now and not in malls, because people hated them that much. But as a result, it still does a good job of taking in the measurements and doing a comparison. So when the tech pack data is available, this is a really good tool. Not going to knock it. I think it, has room for improvement, but that is what we saw. Next, one of the things that happened recently that you may or may not have paid attention to is Google searchability changed tremendously. So whereas you used to be able to search something on Google and it would give you hundreds of pages that you could choose from, and you only really spent time on those first 3 pages because who cares about what's on page 22, which sucks because someone's website, someone's product, someone's opinion was probably on page 22 and you never got to see it because of how search was set up. Well, because SEO became such a big deal and people have more money to spend on SEO than other people and everything became a sponsored ad, and then the whole idea of searching on Google just got nasty because it's like, this feels like driving through a foreign market where everyone's shoving stuff in your face and you're still not getting the answer. Well, Google changed that and they limited those pages down to 10, which means if you existed on page 22, darling, you don't exist anymore. Now, a phenomenon that is happening as a result that we need to pay attention to is we're shifting from SEO, so search engine optimization, to AEO, so AI engine optimization, which means if you want to exist in the modern time and be searchable, you absolutely are going to have to exist in AI. And figuring out how to exist in an AI database means you probably need multiple touch points for your brand. So now when we're thinking about marketing for branding, you gotta go with all the mediums you can possibly go through, all the channels, just so you can exist on an LLM, so that as people use AI to search for clothing, as people use AI to match their outfits, you can show up in these tools as well, and you don't have to worry about becoming extinct because you no longer exist on Google. As we switch from SEO optimization to AEO optimization, I do think one of the other trends that's worth mentioning, the majority of searches now on search engines like Google are actually being done by bots. So bots are scraping the internet to find the best information, which is why you absolutely are going to have to code your products, make sure they exist in the right way. So your marketing strategy is going to have to change because you have to show up in new engines that you did not have to show up before. So all of that ad money you're spending to show up on Google or on Instagram, that's cool. But if an AI tool can't find you when they're scraping stuff and it's not exactly made for them, you're going to miss out. You're definitely going to have to translate your products into a language that AI understands. So those were just some of the trends of things that we saw at PI Apparel, Retail Rebels. And I think that for brands, this is a pivotal time. So I'm not saying don't invest in ad spend, but I am saying you're going to have to invest in expertise now because the visibility of your product is being threatened. Your ability to advertise your product is being threatened. Where you can even have your products is being threatened. And if you don't know the change in landscape, your design is no good to us. So it's great for you to be a designer. You definitely are going to need a business team of people who understand this market so that you can get ahead of it. So we will have more opportunities to have educational moments around this, but brands have got to think like a tech company. You've got to be more modern and you've got to be prepared for the shift that's coming because, it's not stopping, dear, and you don't want to be left out. As cool as your designs are, as dope as you are, imagine having Essence owe you millions of dollars because they can't move product for you, and you don't have another place where you can move your product, and you're already probably in debt, and you need to get your next collection made. Some of the biggest names right now are suffering as a result, and you don't have to repeat that process. So with that being said, pay attention to fashion technology, pay attention to retail technology. All of these things are going to matter, and I'm absolutely here for you. So make sure you follow me, subscribe to my newsletter, which I'm absolutely going to move off LinkedIn because LinkedIn feels like a waste of time because LinkedIn isn't as great anymore. So I'm going to be moving to Substack. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to subscribe. So when we make that move, you'll be there. And then, if you have questions and things, reach out, but stay informed because things are changing. See you soon.